Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you.
Right. Welcome back, Wolfpack. It's Fox Trevize here. Dire Wolf could not be with us tonight, unfortunately. But I am here, and we'll be watching the State of the Union tonight, which, we'll be watching an imaginary rendition of what we wish maybe the State of the Union was, because we can be goddamn sure that the true State of the Union is not the presentation that Joe Biden has for us tonight. Supposedly starting in about 10 minutes, though Joe Biden, as you guys may know, is often late to his own speeches, which is odd because, I don't know, presumably he has the option to set the time, and if he can't make it, maybe, I don't know, just set it for later. Few things while we wait for this to start. You may notice, wow, look at the congressional floor here. I can't remember which chamber this is in. It's kind of irrelevant, but you may notice something missing from the floor of Congress for a long time now, and that is masks. So many masks. Oh my God, that is such a ridiculous duo. And my God, did Kamala not learn anything from Obama's faux pas with a skin-colored suit there? Before I'll do a few predictions here before we get into this. There's Millie. Wow, I'm surprised he has time to come to this. I figured he'd be on the phone with his Chinese counterpart, giving them classified information. But before we get into that, a little bit, just some house cleaning. Did you guys see the show on Sunday? Did a little update on Ukraine. And having seen the update since, the progress that, I guess, that's been happening over there, I feel pretty vindicated for Sunday's show. I came in on Sunday, and I told you guys I didn't really know what to tell you, because there was so much apparently fake stuff out there, so much propaganda out there, and I'd be damned if I was going to be sharing with you guys and doing commentary on events that just didn't happen. This isn't we're not the left. It's not enough to just look at an event and say, well, it could have happened, and if it did happen, by God, wouldn't that be terrible? No, but that's just like Jussie Smollett stuff. It's all the hoax hate crime stuff. No. So unlike a lot of other outlets, I think Dire Wolf Media acted rather responsibly. Not that we'll be rewarded much for that, but a lot of other outlets, big and small this week, they spent the last 2 days retracting a lot of the things that they had said last week, retracting a lot of the kind of false hero worship of these mythical actors in Ukraine. Not that there isn't heroics going on in Ukraine, but we now know for sure that the Ghost of Kiev was essentially all fake. We know that the story of the Battle of Snake Island was all fake. We know that a lot of the images of Zelensky and military attire, looking like he's out there with the troops and fighting alongside them, street by street. A lot of that was fake, or, to the extent that it was fake, it wasn't stuff that was taken in the last couple of days. It was stuff that was from months and years ago. So, I feel pretty vindicated on that. A lot of places having to kind of retract, and some places still leaning into it. I'm looking at you, Daily Wire, who is still leaning into some of the obviously fake news coming out of the Ukraine. There is plenty of real stories, plenty of real ramifications to come out of Ukraine, and I don't see a point in focusing on propaganda. it is Zelensky appears to be a good leader. He's doing everything that he can for his people, and that includes lying to the rest of the world to try to trick us into helping them. And that is good and just for him to do. He should be doing everything he can. He was charged. He has a duty to do anything he can for his people, and he seems to be doing it. However, just because it's his duty to try and trick us does not mean it's our duty to fall for it. So, no, we will not be, making, sort of philosophical dissections of these events that never happened. I think that there's plenty of real stuff to focus on, and it's not necessary to focus on stories like the Ghost of Kiev or the cell phone that was supposedly found in a dead Russian soldier's pocket with his, the last tearful text to his mother about how he was scared he was going to die and how he didn't like killing civilians and all that stuff. So I feel rather vindicated for Sunday's show if you guys missed it. So a little bit more on Ukraine, which is not, obviously tonight's not going to be a Ukraine show, but apparently stuff's not going well over there. And I think that we should probably continue to prepare for it to get worse. What does preparation look like for you? Well, it's something that you'd have to decide on your own, though I think that the lessons learned throughout the last 2 years of COVID, with, staying stocked with your pantries, kind of knowing who's in your circle, keeping track of your household and that sort of stuff. I think that those lessons will apply to how you stay prepared for what happens next with Ukraine. All right, so tonight, Joe Biden is supposedly going to give a State of the Union address. Not that there's much of a union left. So I've got a few predictions before we jump in here. I believe that he will, and some of these are probably not, super low probability. It's not like I don't necessarily need a crystal ball for some of these. I think that Biden will mention Trump at least once, if not several times, though I will be shocked if he says his name. I think that he will allude to Trump by saying something like my predecessor. I don't want to say I'll be shocked if Biden says the words Trump, but it would be very unstatesmanlike. And Joe Biden, as much as he's not a statesman, is claimed to be a statesman. And so I think that one, probably his speechwriters will do their best to not keep it in there. But he may ad-lib it, so I guess we'll find out. So that's my prediction, is that he will be mentioning Trump, though not by name. Oh boy, here comes the our Supreme Court goofballs. Alrighty, Joe Biden will also characterize the previous administration as a mess that he inherited. He'll make some mention that it was difficult to come in and deal with all the stuff that his predecessors left behind, which is obviously false. When Trump left office, he left a roaring economy, a vaccine, and peace in the Middle East. And after that, Joe Biden, in as short an order as he possibly could, got war in the Middle East, war in Europe too, like the hell, and COVID just, botched the hell out of that and continued to destroy the economy. Joe Biden will mention over and over and over again his diversity hire Supreme Court pick, as you may have, maybe you didn't see. If you missed it, last week Joe Biden nominated I don't know, she's black. She said that he was looking for a black woman, so I guess he found one. So I think, some people have said that perhaps we should just refer to her as the diversity hire, and I agree. That's how I'm going to refer to her. Joe Biden will mention climate change over and over again. I've also seen some reports that the administration's attempting to rebrand Build Back Better as a new catchphrase, I guess. So maybe we'll see that tonight. Though I'm sure, you can rebrand that all you want. We don't want it. Nancy and Kamala will stand and clap at awkward times, perhaps too often. I also predict that some of the Democrats will not stand. I predict that some of them will refuse to stand for various reasons. Joe Biden will take responsibility for a roaring economy, whether it's true or not. He's also going to take responsibility for a dramatically lower unemployment rate, whether it's true or not. And he will also talk about the minority unemployment rate, which also is probably not true. He will take responsibility for lowering the COVID numbers, which if you saw over the weekend, the CDC revised the formulas they use to project COVID infections, and the country went from 95% of, zones or counties were in high risk, and then after the CDC updated their formula, suddenly it went from 95% of areas in high risk to only 30% at moderate risk, and everything else below that. So I'm sure the science and apparently the math has changed. So I guess we'll get to see that perhaps. And then Biden will obviously, it's inescapable. He will obviously have to mention Ukraine. I'm not sure how they're going to spin that, though. I imagine maybe it'll be during the Ukraine segment, but certainly somewhere in his speech. He will probably make some kind of mention about the deplorables, the MAGA, the January 6th, basically identifying us, anybody who didn't pull the lever for him or didn't pull the lever hard enough for him, will be identified as some kind of problematic class of people that possibly is the reason why there is, terror and war throughout the world. Because Joe Biden, as opposed to everything they would like you to believe and like what he would like you to believe, he is not a unifier. He is one of the most divisive presidents. Well, he's been the most divisive president since Obama, who was probably the most divisive president since probably Carter was the next one, though Carter did not do much. Alrighty, well, we are already 1 minute late, so great. I am on the NBC stream. And I'm going to turn up the volume here a little bit, and I guess we'll see where we're at. I guess it's not a hard and fast start at 9 p.m., kind of a get going around then, but I think in a time of war, punctuality might be prudent, especially just for Joe Biden just being, I guess we're going to commercial. Joe Biden just being prudent, punctual at any point would be, pretty amazing. Alrighty, let's see here. This seems like kind of promo they got for the State of the Union. Let's listen in.
Live from Washington, here are Lester Holt and Savannah Guthrie.
Oh,
and good evening from Washington. I'm Savannah Guthrie here with Lester Holt. In just moments from now, President Joe Biden will enter the House chamber to give his first official State of the Union address. And it comes at a moment when the world is in crisis and on the precipice. Russia has invaded its neighbor Ukraine, shattering peace in Europe and unleashing a massive assault growing more brutal by the day. We're on the ground in Ukraine tonight as the world waits for what message President Biden will deliver to Americans, to Ukrainians, and to Moscow tonight.
And as always, issues here at home to grapple with. You've got the pandemic, rising inflation hitting Americans hard. Any moment now, we expect the Sergeant at Arms to announce the president's arrival. There's a big difference from last year, and that is the size of the crowd. All members.
Sorry to hear about that, Gray Apathy. I'll have to play around with the chat feature over there. I haven't used Rumble very much. I really need to, learn how to use it better. That might be good for me. But yeah, you can hop over on YouTube or DLive chat for sure. And I know that you guys probably had a lot of other commentators also streaming tonight alongside the State of the Union. So as always, very much appreciated for choosing us. Always thankful for that. I'm seeing a lot of yellow and blue ribbons, flags, ties, a dress. A lot of yellow and blue, obviously in support of Ukraine, as that is their colors. I support Ukraine as well, just not militarily. So I guess we'll see that. I'm so surprised that all of the I don't know. I'm gonna keep my mouth shut on that one. It's interesting that we're on the cusp of nuclear war, and you have so many people in one spot. It's a little interesting there. Wondering who the designated survivor is tonight. Let's let me Google that. Well, let's see here. We'll go to PBS. Just has the raw audio. Yeah, let me Google who the designated survivor is tonight. Usually they have one from each party. Alrighty, we have Commerce Secretary Gina Raimondo is the designated survivor of Biden's State of the Union. Though I don't know, I would imagine that the Republicans chose somebody. And she's not exactly in, I guess she'd be a cabinet secretary. She's not exactly in the line of succession. Let me see here. I don't see it. Oh, there's Biden back there. Wonder how much Adderall he had tonight.
Madam Speaker, the President of the United States.
Yeah, that's always an iconic moment, for the number of State of the Unions we've ever had, which is more of a recent tradition within the last 50 or 60 years. Don't remember exactly when it started, but it wasn't always this big production. It was meant to be, as I designated in the Constitution, as a letter the president was to send to Congress, and then Congress could read the letter. It wasn't meant to be a big presentation or a big speech or this big pomp and circumstance event. That's kind of a modern invention. It has nothing to do with the original intention of the State of the Union. But I guess, we looked over at the Royals across the pond and decided we wanted our own kind of coronation event, something that we can look forward to, I guess, and the politicians can feel like they're royalty for a day. And rather incredibly, Joe Biden, who wore a mask while getting lost on the lawn yesterday after departing Marine One, is now out and about in the crowd, just shaking hands everywhere. Man. I also saw Lloyd Austin a little bit ago. Lloyd Austin, who's famously, for the last almost 2 years, has been wearing a full double mask and face shield. He's also walking around, all but naked compared to his normal attire. There you go, a little jaunt up the stairs there. Wow, he's got a lot of pep in his step. Whoa, boy, that was a lot of Adderall they gave him. Do we think Nancy is going to be ripping up the speech tonight? So I guess we'll find out. Alrighty, boost the audio here, and I'll do my best to not comment. I am curious what he has to say.
Members of Congress, I have the high privilege and distinct honor of presenting to you the President of the United States.
Kamala Harris. Oh, wait. And YouTube and PBS, I don't want to hear nothing about copyright infringement. This is public broadcasting. This is taxpayer money funding your organization, and I pay taxes, so fair use.
Thank you all very much. Thank you, General. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all very, very much. Thank you. Please. Thank you so much. Madam Speaker, Madam Vice President, our First Lady and Second Gentleman, members of Congress and the Cabinet, Justices of the Supreme Court, my fellow Americans. Last year, COVID-19 kept us apart. This year, we're finally together again. Tonight,
That was something that happened literally a day ago.
independence, but most importantly, as Americans, with the duty to one another, to America, to the American people, to the Constitution, and an unwavering resolve that freedom will always triumph over tyranny.
Wow, right off the gate, he is almost choking on the words. He did get him out, though there was a little bit of a hitch in his voice there, so this is going to be a strap in.
Russia's Vladimir Putin sought to shake the very foundations of the free world, thinking he could make it bend to his menacing ways. But he badly miscalculated. He thought he could roll into Ukraine and the world would roll over. Instead, he met with a wall of strength he never anticipated or imagined.
And
he met the
already
Ukrainian people.
missing words. Is this the state of our union or the state of the Ukrainian union?
From President Zelensky to every Ukrainian, their fearlessness, their courage, their determination literally inspires the world. Groups of citizens blocking tanks with their bodies. Everyone from students to retirees to teachers turned soldiers defending their homeland. And in this struggle, President Zelensky said in his speech to the European Parliament, "Light will win over darkness." The Ukrainian ambassador to the United States is here tonight, sitting with the First Lady. Let each of us, if you're able to stand and send an unmistakable signal to the world of Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Absolutely talk about Ukraine in a dedicated speech, not at the State of the Union. Christ.
She's bright, she's strong, and she's resolved.
Though this is a good strategy to pad out time so he doesn't have to talk about what he's been doing for the last year, collapsing the State of the Union.
Yes. We, the United States of America, stand with the Ukrainian people. Throughout our history, we've learned this lesson. When dictators do not pay a price for their aggression, they cause more chaos. They keep moving, and the cost, the threats to America and America to the world keeps rising. That's why the NATO alliance was created, to secure peace and stability in Europe after World War II. The United States is a member.
And what a great job it did in lighting the match to start whatever's going on now.
American resolve matters. Putin's latest attack on Ukraine was premeditated and totally unprovoked. He rejected repeated efforts at diplomacy. He thought the West and NATO wouldn't respond. He thought he could divide us at home, in this chamber, in this nation. He thought he could divide us in Europe as well. But Putin was wrong. We are ready. We are united, and that's what we did. We stayed united. We prepared extensively and carefully. We spent months building coalitions of other freedom-loving nations in Europe and the Americas, from America to the Asian and African continents, to confront Putin. Like many of you, I spent countless hours unifying.
I have no idea what he is talking about. I have no idea what this coalition that he's talking about is. Also, he's stumbling a lot already.
And justify his aggression. We countered Russia's lies with the truth. And now that he's acted, the free world is holding him accountable, along with 27 members of the European Union, including France, Germany, Italy, as well as countries like the United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and many others, even Switzerland, are inflicting pain on Russia and supporting the people of Ukraine. Putin is now isolated from the world more than he has ever been. Together,
Why are they clapping? Why are they clapping?
along with our allies, we are right now enforcing powerful economic sanctions. We're cutting off Russia's largest banks from the international financial system, preventing Russia's central bank from defending the Russian ruble, making Putin's $630 billion war fund worthless. We're choking Russia's access. We're choking Russia's access to technology that will sap its economic strength and weaken its military for years to come. Tonight, I say to the Russian oligarchs and the corrupt leaders who bilked billions of dollars off this violent regime, no more. The United States, I mean it. The United States Department of Justice is assembling a dedicated task force to go after the crimes of the Russian oligarchs. We're joining with European allies to find and seize their yachts, their luxury apartments, their private
Why
jets.
is the DOJ? It's a domestic civilian organization. Why is the DOJ handling international crimes? The hell?
Airspace to all Russian flights, further isolating Russia and adding additional squeeze on their economy. He has no idea what's coming. The ruble has already lost 30% of its value. The Russian stock market has lost 40% of its value, and trading remains suspended. The Russian economy is reeling, and Putin alone is the one to blame. Together with our allies, we're providing support to the Ukrainians in their fight for freedom. Military assistance, economic assistance, humanitarian assistance.
If there's one thing Joe Biden knows how to do, it's collapse an economy.
Aid the Ukrainian people as they defend their country and help ease their suffering. But let me be clear. Our forces are not engaged and will not engage in the conflict with Russian forces in Ukraine. Our forces are not going to Europe.
Did he say clown
Ukraine,
flick?
but to defend our NATO allies in the event that Putin decides to keep moving west. For that purpose, we have mobilized American ground forces, air squadrons, ship deployments to protect NATO countries including Poland, Romania, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. And as I've made crystal clear, the United States and our allies will defend every inch of territory that is NATO territory with the full force of our collective power. Every single inch. And we're clear-eyed. The Ukrainians are fighting back with pure courage. But the next few days, weeks, and months will be hard on them. Putin has unleashed violence and chaos, but while he may make gains on the battlefield, he'll pay a continuing high price over the long run. And a pound of Ukrainian people, the proud, proud people, pound for pound, ready to fight with every inch of energy they have. They've known 30 years of independence, have repeatedly shown that they will not tolerate anyone who tries to take their country backwards. To all Americans, I'll be honest with you, as I always promised I would be. A Russian dictator invading a foreign country has cost around the world. And I'm taking robust action to make sure the pain of our sanctions is targeted at the Russian economy and that we use every tool at our disposal to protect American businesses and consumers. Tonight, I can announce the United States has worked with 30 other countries to release 60 million barrels of oil from reserves around the world. America will lead that effort.
How about 60 million barrels from the Keystone Pipeline or from the federal leases that we had that he canceled?
Necessary, united with our allies. These steps will help blunt gas prices here at home, but I know news about what's happening can seem alarming to all Americans. But I want you to know we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. When the history of this era is written, Putin's war in Ukraine will have left Russia weaker and the rest of the world stronger. Well,
that is probably true.
While it shouldn't. While it shouldn't have taken something so terrible for people around the world to see what's at stake, now everyone sees it clearly. We see the unity among leaders of nations, a more unified Europe, a more unified West. We see unity among the people who are gathering in cities in large crowds around the world, even in Russia, to demonstrate their support for the people of Ukraine. In the battle between democracy and autocracies, democracies are rising to the moment, and the world is clearly choosing the side of peace and security. This is the real test, and it's going to take time. So let us continue to draw inspiration from the iron will of the Ukrainian people.
He is right that Putin's going to be more tightly unifying Europe. You already see from what they've done this week, they are becoming a much less silly people, and I hope that the U.S. follows them in becoming less silly in the coming decade.
He'll never extinguish their love of freedom, and he will never weaken the resolve of the free world.
Shaman King, by and large, the Russian people appear not to support what Putin's doing.
Two of the hardest years this nation has ever faced. The pandemic has been punishing, and so many families are living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to keep up with the rising cost of food, gas, housing, and so much more. I understand, like many of you did. My dad
finally,
had to
our
leave
State of
his
the
home
Union.
in Scranton, Pennsylvania, to find work. So like many of you, I grew up in a family when the price of food went up, it was felt throughout the family. It had an impact. That's when one of the first things I did as president was fight to pass the American Rescue Plan. Because people were hurting. We needed to act, and we did. Few pieces of legislation have done more at a critical moment in our history to lift us out of a crisis. It fueled our efforts to vaccinate the nation and combat COVID-19. Delivered immediate economic relief to tens of millions of Americans. It helped put food on the table. Remember those long lines of cars waiting for hours just to get a box of food put in their trunk? It cut the cost of health care insurance. And as my dad used to say, it gave the people just a little bit of breathing room. Unlike the $2 trillion tax cut passed in the previous administration.
Oh, there we go.
It benefited the top 1% of Americans. The American Rescue Plan helped working people and left no one behind. Folks,
that's a lie. That's a lie.
And it worked. It worked.
If I understood it correctly, I believe the boos were booing the previous administration for having done the tax cuts. I don't think they were booing Biden, but I could be wrong. It was hard to tell.
6.5 million new jobs just last year. More jobs in 1 year than ever before in the history of the United States of America. The economy grew at a rate of 5.7 last year.
He did not create 6 million jobs. He unshackled 6 million jobs.
That hasn't worked for working people in this nation for too long. For the past 40 years.
Someone change out Turtle McConnell's aquarium, please. He is not looking healthy.
And everyone would benefit. But that trickle-down theory led to a weaker economic growth, lower wages, bigger deficits, and a widening gap between the top and everyone else in nearly a century. Look, Vice President Harris and I ran for office, and I realize we have fundamental disagreements on this, but ran for office with a new economic vision for America. Invest in America, educate Americans, grow the workforce, build the economy from the bottom up and the middle out, not from the top down, because we know when the middle class grows, the poor have a way up and the wealthy do very well. America used to have the best roads, bridges, and airports on earth, and now our infrastructure is ranked 13th in the world. We won't be able to compete for the jobs of the 21st century if we don't fix it. That's why it was so important to pass the bipartisan infrastructure
Yeah, there's Pete Buttigieg, transportation secretary, who took off 3 months for paternity leave so he could breastfeed his adopted daughter.
Rebuild America, the single biggest investment in history.
Triumvirate's nailing it on the head. Yes, infrastructure should be a state issue, not a federal issue. I agree.
We're done talking about infrastructure weeks. We're now talking about an infrastructure decade. And look,
he's going to take a decade to finish this? Jesus.
It's going to transform America, to put us on a path to win the economic competition of the 21st century that we face with the rest of the world, particularly China. I've told Xi Jinping it's never been a good bet to bet against the American people. We'll create good jobs for millions of Americans, modernizing roads, airports, ports, waterways, all across America. And we'll do it to withstand the devastating effects of climate change and promote environmental justice.
And there's climate change.
We'll build a national network of 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations. Begin to replace the poisonous lead pipes so every child, every American has clean water to drink at home and at school. We're going to provide affordable, high-speed internet for every American, rural, suburban, urban, and tribal communities. 4,000 projects have already been announced. Many of you have announced them in your districts. And tonight, I'm announcing that this year, we will start fixing over 65,000 miles of highway and 1,500 bridges in disrepair. And folks,
yes, infrastructure spending is a very easy way and common way to launder money. Absolutely.
When we use taxpayers' dollars to rebuild America, we're going to do it by buying America. Buy American products. Support American jobs.
Buy American oil. Oh, wait.
The federal government spends about $600 billion a year to keep this country safe and secure. There's been a law on the books for almost a century to make sure taxpayers' dollars support American jobs and businesses. Every administration, Democrat and Republican, says they'll do it, but we're actually doing it. We'll buy America to make sure everything from the deck of an aircraft carrier to the steel on highway guardrails is made in America from beginning to end. All of it. All of it. But folks, to compete for the jobs of the future, we also need a level playing field with China and other competitors. That's why it's so important to pass the Bipartisan Innovation Act sitting in Congress that will make record investments in emerging technologies and American manufacturing. We used to invest almost 2% of our GDP in research and development. We don't now. China is. Let me give you one example why it's so important to pass. If you travel 20 miles east of Columbus, Ohio, you'll find 1,000 empty acres of land. It won't look like much, but if you stop and look closely, you'll see a field of dreams, the ground on which America's future will be built. That's where Intel, the American company that helped build Silicon Valley, is going to build a $20 billion semiconductor megasite, up to 8 state-of-the-art factories in one place, 10,000 new jobs. And in those factories, the average job about $135,000 a year. some of the most sophisticated manufacturing in the world, to make computer chips the size of a fingertip, that power the world in everyday lives, from smartphones, technology to the internet.
Yeah, we should be dumping as much money as we possibly can. I don't care how many taxpayer dollars or how many printed dollars into building our own silicon factories here, our own energy manufacturing, like oil exploration here, and then all of the things that carry electricity here. We need those here, and I think any amount of money is worthy of spending on that. Do I think Joe Biden's going to get that over the finish line? I do not think so. Absolutely not.
$20 billion to $100 billion. That would be the biggest investment in manufacturing in American history. And all they're waiting for is for you to pass this bill. So let's not wait any longer. Send it to my desk. I'll sign it. And we'll really take off in a big way.
Yeah, but what else is hidden in there? What else is hidden in there?
Intel is not alone. There's something happening in America. Just look around and you'll see an amazing story. The rebirth of pride that comes from stamping products made in America. The revitalization of American manufacturing. Companies are choosing to build new factories here when just a few years ago they would have gone overseas. That's what's happening.
Yeah, because Trump increased tariffs by like 25% on aluminum. They had no choice. They had no choice. Also, Kamala Harris just looks like a floating head. Her pantsuit is completely blending in with that seat. It's hilarious.
369,000 new manufacturing jobs were created in America last year alone. Folks, powered by people I've met like JoJo Burgess from generations of union steelworkers in Pittsburgh, who's here with us tonight. Where are you, JoJo? There you go. Thanks, buddy. As Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown says, it's time to bury the label Rust Belt. It's time to see the what used to be called the Rust Belt become the home of a significant resurgence of manufacturing.
Oh my God, that was so painful.
Record job growth, higher wages. Too many families are struggling to keep up with their bills. Inflation is robbing them of gains they thought otherwise they would be able to feel. I get it. That's why my top priority is getting prices under control. Look, our economy roared back faster than almost anyone predicted. But the pandemic meant that businesses had a hard time hiring enough people because of the pandemic to keep up production in their factories. So you didn't have people making those beams that went into buildings because they were out. The factory was closed. The panic also disrupted the global supply chain. Factories close. When that happens, it takes longer to make goods and get them to the warehouses, to the stores.
Whose panic disrupted the supply chains? Ours or the government's?
All the inflation was because of automobile sales. There weren't enough semiconductors to make all the cars that people wanted to buy. And guess what? Prices of automobiles went way up, especially used vehicles as well. And so we have a choice. One way to fight inflation is to drive down wages and make Americans poorer. I think I have a better idea to fight inflation. Lower your costs, not your wages.
Well, why don't you close the border? 2 million, over 2 million illegal immigrants in his first year. You think that's not depressing wages?
That means make more cars and semiconductors in America, more infrastructure and innovation in America, more goods moving faster and cheaper in America, more jobs where you can earn a good living in America. Instead of relying on foreign supply chains, let's make it in America. Look, economists
Is this a stolen America first policy? Wow, no, Xi Jinping must have really pissed Biden off this week. Christ, I thought they paid for better presidency than that.
Better America.
I know.
My plan to fight inflation will lower your costs and lower the deficit. 17 Nobel laureates in economics said my plan will ease long-term inflationary pressures. Top business leaders, and I believe most Americans support the plan. And here's the plan. First, cut the cost of prescription drugs. We pay more for the same drug produced by the same company in America than any other country in the world. Just look at insulin. 1 in 10 Americans has diabetes. In Virginia, I met a 13-year-old boy, the handsome young man standing up there, Joshua Davis. He and his dad both have type 1 diabetes, which means they need insulin every single day. Insulin costs about $10 a vial to make. That's what it costs the pharmaceutical company. But drug companies charge families like Joshua and his dad up to 30 times that amount. I spoke with Joshua.
And it's type 1, so it's covered by Medicaid and Medicare.
Look at your child who needs insulin to stay healthy and have no idea how in God's name you're going to be able to pay for it. What it does to your family, but what it does to your dignity, your ability to look your child in the eye, to be the parent you expect yourself to be. I really mean to think about that. That's what I think about. You know, yesterday, Joshua's here tonight, but yesterday was his birthday. Happy birthday, buddy, by the way. For Joshua and 200,000 other young people with type 1 diabetes, let's cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month so everyone can afford it. And drug companies will do very, very well, their profit margin. While we're at it, I know we have great disagreements on this floor with this. Let's let Medicare negotiate the price of prescription drugs. They already set the price for VA drugs. Look, the American Rescue Plan is helping millions of families with Affordable Care Act plans to save them $2,400 a year on their health premiums. Let's close the coverage gap and make these savings permanent. And second, let's cut energy costs for families, an average of $500 a year by combating climate change. Let's provide an investment tax credits to weatherize your home and your business, to be energy efficient and get a tax credit for it. Double America's clean energy production in solar, wind, and so much more.
Sounds like people who already have homes will get a windfall, and people who don't won't.
Folks, the third thing we can do to change the standard of living for hardworking folks is cut the cost of child care. Cut the cost of child care.
Thank you for the lemon there, Shaman King.
Folks, if you live in a major city in America, you pay up to $14,000 a year for child care per child. I was a single dad for 5 years, raising 2 kids. I had a lot of help, though. I had a mom, a dad, a brother, and a sister that really helped. But middle class and working folks shouldn't have to pay more than 7% of their income to care for the young children. My plan would cut the cost of child care in half for most families and help parents, including millions of women who left the workforce during the pandemic because they couldn't afford child care, to be able to get back to work, generating economic growth. But my plan doesn't stop there. It also includes home and long-term care, more affordable housing, pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds. All these will lower costs for families. And under my plan, nobody, let me say this again, nobody earning less than $400,000 a year will pay an additional penny in new taxes. Not a single penny.
So, to all the poor people getting all these tax benefits, you try to buy milk lately? Buy some eggs? Buy some gas? Is that saving you money? Are all these policies saving you money? And that's just a taste of what Biden's trying to do with the welfare state.
We have to fix it. I'm not looking to punish anybody. But let's make corporations and wealthy Americans start paying their fair share. Look, last year, and like Chris Coons and Tom Carper and my distinguished Congresswoman, we come from the land of corporate America. There are more corporations incorporated in America than every other state in America combined. And I still won 36 years in a row.
Joe Biden hasn't been in any kind of corporate world in 51 years.
Last year, 55 of the Fortune 500 companies earned $40 billion in profit and paid zero in federal taxes. Now look, it's not fair. That's why I proposed a 15% minimum tax rate for corporations. And that's why in the G7 and other meetings overseas, I was able to be somewhat helpful. 130 countries agree on a global minimum tax rate.
You can't take away investment deductions from industry and then expect them to invest in new plants to create this new domestic supply chain he's talking about. That's insane.
For the very wealthy who pay a lower tax rate than a teacher and a firefighter. So that's my plan, but we'll go in more detail later. We will grow the economy, lower the cost of families. So what are we waiting for? Let's get this done. We all know we've got to make changes. Folks, clap for that, you stupid bastard. And while you're at it, confirm my nominees for the Federal Reserve, which plays a critical role in fighting inflation. My plan will not only lower costs and give families...
Fighting for or against it?
Lower the deficit. The previous administration not only ballooned the deficit with those tax cuts for the very wealthy and corporations, it undermined the watchdogs, the job of those to keep pandemic relief funds being wasted. Remember we had those debates about whether or not those watchdogs should be able to see every day how much money was being spent, where was it going to the right place? But in my administration, the watchdogs are back. And we're going to go after the criminals who stole billions of relief money meant for small business and millions of Americans. And tonight I'm announcing that the Justice Department will soon name a chief prosecutor for pandemic fraud.
I'm guessing that is going to wrap up a lot of people in a certain demographic, and then they're going to stop prosecuting it. It will be, I guarantee you, within the next 2 years, that will be declared racist because of the types of people who committed that kind of fraud.
This year, the deficit will be down to less than half of what it was before I took office. The only president ever to cut the deficit by more than $1 trillion in a single year. Lowering your cost also meant demanding more competition. I'm a capitalist. But
I would hope that he spent less than the year that we printed off $7 trillion and spent it all in one big go.
It drives up profits.
I'm still stuck on this Federal Reserve fights inflation. The Federal Reserve is literally only can create inflation. It has no other lever to pull. Either it just doesn't exist or it creates inflation. It doesn't do anything else. It exists to create inflation. That's its purpose.
Facilities. That's it. You play with them or you don't get to play at all. And you pay a hell of a lot more. A hell of a lot more because there's only 4. See what's happening with ocean carriers moving goods in and out of America. During the pandemic, about half a dozen or less foreign-owned companies raised prices by as much as 1,000% and made record profits. Tonight, I'm announcing a crackdown on those companies overcharging American businesses and consumers. And folks, And as Wall Street firms take over more nursing homes, quality in those homes has gone down and costs have gone up. That ends on my watch. Medicare is going to set higher standards for nursing homes and make sure your loved ones get the care they deserve and that they inspect and they will look at closely. We're also going to cut costs to keep the economy going strong and giving workers a fair shot, provide more training and apprenticeships, hire them based on skills, not just their degrees. Let's pass the Paycheck Fairness Act and paid leave. Raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour.
What on God's green earth is the Paycheck Fairness Act? What on earth is that? Oh my God, that sounds terrible.
Increase Pell Grants, increase our historic support for HBCUs.
Oh yes, increased Pell Grants is exactly what we're missing. That we found out during the pandemic, we actually had a shortage of useless college degrees. We need more Pell Grants, please.
Look, let's pass the PRO Act. When a majority of workers want to form a union, they shouldn't be able to be stopped. When we invest in our workers and we build an economy from the bottom up and the middle out together, we can do something we haven't done in a long time. Build a better America. For more than 2 years, COVID has impacted every decision in our lives and the life of this nation. And I know you're tired, frustrated.
Where's the pipe fitters union boss? I'd like to see him here.
Close to 1 million people who sit at a dining room table or a kitchen table and look at an empty chair because they lost somebody. But I also know this, because of the progress we've made, because of your resilience and the tools that we have been provided by this Congress, tonight I can say we're moving forward safely back to more normal routines. We've reached a new moment in the fight against COVID-19, where severe cases are down to a level not seen since July of last year. Just a few days ago, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention issued a new mask guidelines. Under the new guidelines, most Americans and most of the country
Oh, and it just so happened to coincide, so you can announce that at the State of the Union. Wow.
And based on projections, more of the country will reach a point across the next couple of weeks. And thanks to the progress we've made in the past year, COVID-19 no longer need control our lives. I know some are talking about living with COVID-19, but tonight I say that we never will just accept living with COVID-19. We'll continue to combat the virus as we do other diseases. And because this virus mutates and spreads, we have to stay on guard. And here are 4 common sense steps as we move forward safely, in my view. First, stay protected with vaccines and treatments. We know how incredibly effective vaccines are. If you're vaccinated
yeah, we
and
do.
boosted, you have the highest degree of protection. And we'll never give up on vaccinating more Americans. Now, I know parents with kids under 5 are eager to see their vaccines authorized for their children.
I don't think they are.
Scientists are working hard to get that done. We'll be ready with plenty of vaccines if and when they do. We're all ready. We are also ready with antiviral treatments. If you get COVID-19, the Pfizer pill reduces your chances of ending up in the hospital by 90%. I've ordered more pills than anyone in the world has.
I believe
Pfizer's
that.
working overtime to get us 1 million pills this month and more than double that next month. And now we're launching the Test to Treat initiative. So people can get tested at a pharmacy, and if they prove positive, receive the antiviral pills on the spot at no cost.
Where was that policy 21 months ago? Christ, people were asking and begging for that policy 21 months ago. I mean, thousands of people died because that policy wasn't in place, and it was so easy to put in place. And that's Trump's fault, too.
We're leaving no one behind or ignoring anyone.
And maybe the media shouldn't have... Maybe they shouldn't have been demonizing the treatment aspect of it. Jesus Christ, that's cruel.
Doorstep. And we've already ordered free tests. If you already ordered free tests tonight, I'm announcing you can order another group of tests. Go to covidtest.gov starting next week, and you can get more tests. Second, we must prepare for new variants. Over the past, we've gotten much better at detecting new variants. If necessary, we'll be able to develop new vaccines within 100 days instead of maybe months or years. And if Congress provides the funds we need, we'll have new stockpiles of tests, masks, pills ready if needed. I can't promise a new variant won't come, but I can promise you we'll do everything within our power to be ready if it does. Third, we can end the shutdown of schools and businesses. We have the tools we need. It's time for America to get back to work and fill our great downtowns again with people. People working from home can feel safe and begin to return to their offices. We're doing that here in the federal government. The vast majority of federal workers will once again work in person. Our schools are open. Let's keep it that way. Our kids need to be in school.
Yeah, and that was a poll-tested statement right there, because it turns out that when you just don't let your kid go to school for 2 years during their formative years, they don't end up very well. And a lot of parents are noticing that. A lot of parents are really pissed about that.
Most Americans can remove their masks and stay in the classroom and move forward safely. We achieved this because we provided free vaccines, treatments, tests, and masks. Of course, continuing this costs money, so I'll not surprise you. I'll be back to see you all. And I'm going to soon send a request to Congress. The vast majority of Americans have used these tools and may want again. We may need them again, so I expect Congress, and I hope you'll pass that quickly. Fourth, we'll continue vaccinating the world. We've sent 475 million vaccine doses to 112 countries, more than any nation on earth. We won't stop, because you can't build a wall high enough to keep out a vaccine. The vaccine can stop the spread of these diseases.
What on earth joke was that? I mean, talk about cruel, joking about the border wall when you had the unimaginable record-breaking illegal immigration this past year.
See it for what it is, a god-awful disease. Let's stop seeing each other as enemies.
Awful.
Start seeing each other
for
who we are.
Please pull the camera off of that. Please.
Look,
thank you.
We can't change how divided we've been. It was a long time in coming. But we can change how to move forward on COVID-19 and other issues that we must face together. I recently visited New York City Police Department days after the funerals of Officer Wilbur Mora and his partner, Officer Jason Rivera. They were responding to a 9/11 call when a man shot and killed them with a stolen gun. Officer Moore was 27 years old. Officer Rivera was 22 years old. Both Dominican Americans who grew up in the same streets that they later chose to patrol as police officers. I spoke with their families, and I told them that we were forever in debt for their sacrifices and will carry on their mission to restore the trust and safety of every community deserves. Like some of you that have been around for a while, I've worked with you on these issues for a long time. I know what works. Investigating crime prevention and community policing, cops who walk the beat, who know the neighborhood, and who can restore trust and safety. Let's not abandon our streets or choose between safety and equal justice. Let's come together and protect our communities, restore trust, and hold law enforcement accountable. That's why the Justice Department has required body cameras, banned chokeholds, and restricted no-knock warrants for its officers. That's why the American Rescue Plan that you all provided $350 billion that cities, states, and counties can use to hire more police, invest in more proven strategies.
I believe it was Rand Paul who introduced one of the most comprehensive anti-no-knock warrant bills imaginable, and I believe the Democrats shot that down. So,
proven strategies like community violence interruption, trusted messengers, breaking the cycle of violence and trauma, and giving young people some hope. We should all agree the answer is not to defund the police. It's to fund the police. Fund them.
What?
Fund them.
What? That is a pivot. I guess the parties have switched again, just like after slavery and after civil rights. The parties have switched again.
Resources and training they need to protect our communities. I ask Democrats and Republicans alike to pass my budget and keep our neighborhoods safe. And we'll do everything in my power to crack down on gun trafficking of ghost guns that you can buy online, assemble at home, no serial numbers, can't be traced. I ask Congress to pass proven measures to reduce gun violence. Pass universal background checks. Why should anyone on the terrorist list be able to purchase a weapon? Why?
They can't. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous.
And folks, ban assault weapons with high-capacity magazines that hold up to 100 rounds. You think the deer are wearing Kevlar vests?
They're not for the deer. They're for when the Russians come knocking on my door.
It's the only industry in America that can't be sued. The only one. Imagine had we done that with the tobacco manufacturers.
Excuse me, the vaccine manufacturers cannot be sued either.
The most fundamental right in America is the right to vote and have it counted. And look, it's under assault. In state after state, new laws have been passed. Not only suppress
The police thing. I mean, I can't imagine what their internal polling must look like. That was obviously not a winner for the American people, and Joe Biden's just a flag flapping in the wind, whichever direction it blows. I can't imagine what those polling numbers must look like for him to have said fund the police.
Americans know who's funding our election. Look, tonight, I'd like to honor someone who dedicated his life to serve this country. Justice Breyer, an Army veteran, constitutional scholar, retiring Justice of the United States Supreme Court. Justice Breyer, thank you for your service. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, good fucking riddance.
Get up, stand, let them see you. Thank you. And we all know, no matter what your ideology, we all know one of the most serious constitutional responsibility a president has is nominating someone to serve on the United States Supreme Court.
Here it is.
As I did 4 days ago, I've nominated the Circuit Court of Appeals, Ketanji Brown Jackson, one of our nation's top legal minds, who continue in Justice Breyer's legacy of excellence.
It's going to be an empty set of black robes.
A former top litigator in private practice, a former federal public defender, from a family of public school educators and police officers. She's a consensus builder.
Those formers he just listed off for her resume, I'm sure we'll go through that in the next few weeks here, but those formers were like 2 or 3 month long stints. They were very, very short formers. She's not had a lot of experience as any kind of judge at any level.
We need to secure our border and fix the immigration system.
Oh, do we now? We do what now? We got to secure the border? I'll try to be quiet because I do want to hear what he has to say about this.
And as you might guess, I think we can do both. At our border, we've installed new technology like cutting-edge scanners to better detect drug smuggling. We've set up joint patrols with Mexico and Guatemala to catch more human traffickers. We're putting in place dedicated immigration judges in a significant larger number so families fleeing persecution and violence can have their cases heard faster, and those who don't legitimately hear can be sent back. We're screening, we're securing commitments and supporting partners in South and Central America to host more refugees and secure their own borders. We can do all this while keeping lit the torch of liberty that has led a generation of immigrants to this land, my forebears and many of yours. Provide a pathway to citizenship for dreamers, those with temporary status, farm workers, essential workers.
The dreamers are turning 50 next year.
So businesses have workers they need, and families don't wait decades to reunite. It's not only the right thing to do, it's economically smart thing to do. That's why the immigration reform is supported by everyone from labor unions to religious leaders to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Let's get it done once and for all. Folks, advancing liberty and justice also requires protecting the rights of women. The constitutional right affirmed by Roe v. Wade, standing precedent for half a century, is under attack as never before. If you want to go forward, not backwards, we must protect access to health care, preserve a woman's right to choose, and continue to advance maternal health care for all Americans. And folks, for our LGBTQ plus Americans, let's finally get the Bipartisan Equality Act to my desk. The onslaught of state laws targeting transgender Americans and their families, it's simply wrong. And I said last year, especially to our younger transgender Americans, I'll always have your back as your president so you can be yourself and reach your God-given potential. Folks,
Did he just assume their pronouns as yourself? My God.
as I've just demonstrated, while it often appears we do not agree, and that we do agree on a lot more things than we acknowledge. I signed 80 bipartisan bills into law last year, from preventing government shutdowns, to protecting aged Americans from still too common hate crimes, to reforming military justice, and will soon be strengthening the Violence Against Women Act that I first wrote 3 decades ago. It's important. It's important for us to show the nation we can come together and do big things. So tonight I'm offering a unity agenda for the nation. 4 big things we can do together, in my view. First, beat the opioid epidemic.
By giving out crack pipes.
We can do increased funding for prevention, treatment, harm reduction, and recovery. Get rid of outdated rules and stop doctors stop doctors from prescribing treatments. Stop the flow of illicit drugs by working with state and local.
There are no laws that prevent doctors from prescribing treatments for opioid addiction. Get that.
You should know you're not alone. I believe in recovery, and I celebrate the 23 million Americans in recovery. Second, let's take
He supports Hunter Biden by giving him, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars of Chinese money.
Turned upside down. The American Rescue Plan gave schools money to hire teachers and help students make up for lost learning. I urge every parent to make sure your school does just that. They have the money. We can all play a part. Sign up to be a tutor or a mentor. Children were also struggling before the pandemic. Bullying, violence, trauma, and the harms of social media. As Frances Haugen, who is here tonight with us, has shown, we must hold social media platforms accountable for the national experiment they're conducting on our children for profit. Folks, thank you. Thank you for the courage you showed. It's time to strengthen privacy protections, ban targeted advertising to children, demand tech companies stop collecting personal data on our children, and let's get all Americans the mental health services they need. More people,
including Biden,
can turn for help and full parity between physical and mental health care if we treat it that way in our insurance. Look,
I support all that. I'd love to see it.
Is support our veterans. Veterans are the backbone and the spine of this country. They're the best of us.
Yeah, support the veterans by witch hunts for anybody who liked a Daily Wire post or didn't want to get the vaccine. Yes, it's a great way to support the veterans.
My administration is providing assistance in job training, housing, and now helping lower-income veterans get VA care debt-free. And our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan have faced many dangers, one being stationed at bases breathing in toxic smoke from burn pits. Many of you have been there. I've been in and out of
What is Nancy doing? What was that?
these burn pits that incinerate waste, the waste of war, medical and hazardous material, jet fuel, and so much more. And they come home, many of the world's fittest and best trained warriors in the world, never the same. Headaches, numbness, dizziness. A cancer that would put them in a flag-draped coffin. I know. One of those.
Somebody just yelled 13 of them.
Soldiers was my son, Major Bo Biden.
And we're talking
I don't know
about
for
Bo
sure
again.
if the burn pit that he lived near, that his hooch was near, in Iraq and earlier than that in Kosovo, is the cause of his brain cancer, the disease of so many other troops.
Yeah, this has long been a
committed
myth
find
that Biden's
out
pushed.
everything we
There's no
can.
doubt that soldiers
Committed
get a lot of cancers from
to
various
military
things, but there's
families
been no
like Daniel
evidence
Robinson
that
from
Bo
Ohio,
died of a
the widow
cancer
of Sergeant First
created
Class
by
Heath
his
Robinson.
military
He
deployment.
was born a soldier.
And
Army
then you heard
National
somebody
Guard,
yell out in the
combat
crowd
medic
there,
in
the
Kosovo and
13
Iraq.
draped
Stationed
coffins,
near
obviously
Baghdad, just
referring to the
yards
13 soldiers
from
that
burn
died
pits the size of
during
football
the
fields.
absolutely disastrous
Danielle is here with
Afghanistan
us
withdrawal.
tonight.
That will
They
for
love going to
sure be
Ohio
a
State
remembered
football
clip
games.
after this is over, for sure.
And he loved building Legos with their daughter. But cancer from prolonged exposure to burn pits ravaged Heath's lungs and body. Danielle says Heath was a fighter to the very end. He didn't know how to stop fighting, and neither did she. Through her pain, she found purpose to demand that we do better. Tonight, Danielle, we are going to do better. The VA is pioneering new ways of linking toxic exposure to disease, already helping more veterans get benefits. And tonight, I'm announcing we're expanding eligibility to veterans suffering from 9 respiratory cancers. I'm also calling on Congress to pass a law to make sure veterans devastated by toxic exposure in Iraq and Afghanistan finally get the benefits and the comprehensive health care.
Yeah, the types of cancers that you get from the burn pits would be much more oral and respiratory based. Bo died of brain cancer, and there is again no causal link or evidence ever been provided that it was anything to do with his military service.
Cancer as we know it. This is personal. This is personal to me and to Jill and to Kamala and so many of you. So many of you have lost someone you love. Husband, wife, son, daughter, mom, dad. Cancer is the number 2 cause of death in America, second only to heart disease. Last month, I announced the plan to supercharge the cancer moonshot that President Obama asked me to lead 6 years ago. Our goal is to cut cancer death rates by at least 50% over the next 25 years, and I think we can do better than that.
I think the original moonshot was like 5 years, and Biden was in charge of that, and it's year 6 of it, and it's,
More support
well,
for patients and their families.
they didn't succeed. So now he's re-extended it by 25 years.
What I called ARPA-H, Advanced Research Projects Agency for Health, patterned after DARPA in the Defense Department. Projects that led in DARPA to the internet, GPS, and so much more to make our forces more safer and be able to wage war with more clarity. ARPA will have a singular purpose: to drive breakthroughs in cancer, Alzheimer's and diabetes, and more. A unity agenda for the nation We can do these things. It's within our power, and I don't see a partisan edge to any one of those four things. My fellow Americans, tonight we've gathered in this sacred space, a citadel of democracy, in this capital.
We are a non-theistic
Generation of
republic.
great questions.
That is not a sacred location. It's a public
Done
building.
Great things. We fought for freedom, expanded liberty,
Biden is not a
debated
priest.
totalitarianism and terror. We built the strongest, freest, and most prosperous nation the world has ever known.
And
Now is
none
the
of these
hour.
fools were ordained by
Our
God. You can be
moment
sure of that one.
responsibility, Our test of resolve and conscience, of history itself. It is in this moment that our character of this generation is formed. Our purpose is found. Our future is forged. Well, I know this nation. We'll meet the test, protect freedom and liberty, expand fairness and opportunity, and we will save democracy. As hard as those times have been, I'm more optimistic about America today than I've been my whole life, because I see the future that's within our grasp, because I know there's simply nothing beyond our capacity. We're the only nation on earth that has always turned every crisis we faced into an opportunity. The only nation that can be defined by a single word: possibilities.
Maybe the
So on
only
this
party
night,
that's turned every crisis into an
Our
opportunity.
245th year as a nation, I've come to report on the state of the nation, the State of the Union. And my report is
Oh, my
this.
God.
The State of the Union is strong because you, the American people, are strong. We are stronger today.
Clap for that, Mr. Speaker.
We are stronger today than we were a year ago. And we'll be stronger a year from now than we are today. This is our moment to meet and overcome the challenges of our time. And we will, as one people, one America, the United States of America. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you. Go get him.
All right. Well, that was Joe Biden's State of the Union, and you heard it from him. The state of the nation. I mean, the union. I mean, the people of America is strong. Strong. The state of the union is strong. I believe that about as much as it was easy for Joe Biden to pronounce those words and to get through that sentence. So, not at all. Let's see here. Alrighty. So now here's the part where I have to improv some kind of response to this, right? A lot of lies in there, a lot of kind of mistruths, a lot of Snopes PolitiFact type checks where Joe Biden would say something that's like, meh, technically true, but something that he has no responsibility for, such as the 6 million jobs, quote unquote, created in the last year. I think created's a little bit strong. I believe that I think when the government forcibly shuts down the economy and collapses 10 million jobs, and then only 6 million of them bounce back a year after they release the restrictions, I don't know if that's creating jobs so much as allowing people to go back to work. So it was like, 6 million people allowed to go back to work, not created. My God. Let's see here. So, interesting that the first almost 20 minutes, I think it was about at least 16, I think it was as much as 17 minutes, or 17 or 18 minutes was spent at the beginning on Ukraine. I think that there was a lot of interesting things said about Ukraine. I think that it's obviously a very apropos topic, but I don't know that this was the speech to do that in. I think that there are plenty of, there's every night of every week that Joe Biden could be doing a primetime Oval Office speech. Joe tends to not like to do the primetime speeches. He tends to do them earlier in the afternoon, like a 4 or 5 p.m. slot Eastern. I think that if he wanted to talk about Ukraine in that way, that's his prerogative. I agree with some of what he had to say. I disagreed with some of what he had to say. And then I just thought some of what he had to say was very silly. Like him saying that he's building a coalition with Africa to fight Putin. I have no idea what he's talking about. Absolutely no idea what he's talking about with that. Very, very strange. I think that should have been completely omitted. I think it had no place in this speech whatsoever. And if you think about it, so this was we're at 10:14 Eastern right now. We started at about 9:03 Eastern. So this speech went for approximately 70 minutes. That's a little bit short in my estimation. I don't have these stats on these State of the Union speeches, though I know the last 2 that I've done for Direwolf Media and the last several that I've watched have been closer to 90 minutes. Trump would just go and go and go and go. So this was a little bit short. And then if you lop off another about 20 minutes from it, you get down to 50 minutes, where we only spent 50 minutes talking about the State of the Union. We spent 20 minutes with a State of Europe, State of the European Union, and then we finally got to the American Union. So that was a bit of an odd choice, though not really, because, as I just mentioned, shorter speech, and even shorter if you lop off the time that he's not talking about the State of the Union. And part of that is Joe Biden clearly doesn't have stamina. He was very early on stumbling over his words, choking them up a little bit, mispronouncing things. That one that's going to stick with me for a little while is the attempted joke at a vaccine wall. I'm not... If I'm being generous, I might be able to figure out where he was going with that, but it's a stretch. It's a stretch for me to figure out what the hell he's talking about. I know a lot of people tomorrow will probably be focusing in on that line saying, I have no idea what he's talking about. I think if you really sit down and think about it for 5 minutes, you might be able to figure out where he was trying to go. But when you have to sit down for 5 minutes to overanalyze a joke that was misdelivered, well, it wasn't really a joke, was it? It was probably just a faux pas, snafu, brain toot that Joe Biden had there. I also, the cruelty of joking about the border, just the absolute flood of immigration. There's not even a good word for it, because it's at such a volume that we've never seen before. Previous year records were a little over 1 million. The numbers are still rolling in from last year, but right now we're at well over 2 million illegal immigrants last year, blowing completely out of the water the previous record by double. And so to make a joke about the border wall, and then to make a joke about vaccinating people, especially with the public sentiment on vaccines, is just... it's bad taste. I don't know if that... I would assume that wasn't something that was in the teleprompter, just due to the fact that he wasn't able to fulfill the delivery of the joke. He missed it at the end there. It's probably something that he came up with on his own, and then was unable to execute on because it was longer than 30 words, which is about the most Joe Biden can queue up in his head at any given time. On the border wall, he made mention of one of the ways to get inflation down is not to be suppressing wages with not to be suppressing wages. Well, the key thing that's going to be suppressing wages is immigration. There were some stats that came out a few days ago that the newest estimates are for the illegal immigrant population in the U.S. You've probably heard 11 million for the last 15 years. It's been 11 million illegal immigrants living in the United States since the Bush era. I've remembered that the whole 20 teens. I remember as far back as the Obama election. That has been the number forever. And obviously, it can't just stay static at 11 million when every year we have almost 1 million people coming in, and then last year 2 million people coming in. Well, a couple of days ago, there was a new stat that came out that's estimating it at closer to 40 million. I think it's probably closer to 60 million illegals, but the new official quote unquote number is 40 million illegal immigrants, 2 million of which came in the last year, and most of those would have come in during Joe Biden's time in office, either as president or as a senator. So if you want to see suppressed wages, the population of America is only about 340 or 360 million people. So, I mean, you're talking about a fifth of the country is here illegally. What if we just removed a fifth of the population? What do you think that would do to wages? I mean, yeah, you'd have some labor shortages, but by golly, you would have some absolutely over the moon wages with that. And you know, obviously, if you think about it, that's probably not a good strategy to do. Just remove 40 million people from the economy in one big go. But imagine if those people never entered the economy. If over time, instead of slowly over time trickling in over the last 30 years, 40 million people, if instead of slowly trickling in, slowly suppressing your wages just a little bit every year, if instead of slowly suppressing your wages a little bit every year, if they just never came here and your wages slowly rose instead because there wasn't that downward pressure on them, where would we be at now as a country? Where would we be at with your income? Where would we be at with inflation? Guaranteed we'd be much better off. Speaking of inflation, a wild statement that the Federal Reserve's job is to control inflation. The Federal Reserve has no other job but to create new fiat currency. The creation of new fiat currency is what drives inflation. There is no other mechanism in a fiat system that creates inflation other than the creation of new fiat currency. The Federal Reserve's only job is to create new fiat currency. So this idea that the Federal Reserve is battling inflation, no, they are not. That couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, it's like talking about, you know, using kerosene to fight a fire. It's a liquid. It's near the fire, but it's not having anywhere close to the stated effect that you're claiming it has. It's in fact having the exact opposite effect on that. Without going off onto a Federal Reserve tangent, it's just this, and you saw this a lot with the discussion about Medicare and Medicaid and you know, all of these programs for child care and, you know, free insulin, which if you have type 1 diabetes, you are, you know, thankfully we live in a modern and generous country. And if you have type 1 diabetes, you are allowed to be on Medicare or Medicaid. I'm not positive which one, but that one's covered. I guess yell at me if I'm mistaken on that, but I'm pretty sure that one's been taken care of. But he will talk a lot about these broad macroeconomic factors and say, well, you know, this is hurting you, and well, you know, corporations, they're paying less money than a teacher does for their taxes. And he'll just make these kind of broad proclamations, and politicians do this. It's a form of demagoguery, and the average person doesn't know. They don't know how these things work, and these politicians will just make a statement and then have this kind of non sequitur effect that they're attributing to it. Oh, well, you know, corporations are not paying taxes, therefore, you know, your childcare bill goes up. You know, Warren Buffett, you know, pays 15% taxes on $100 million, and you pay 20% taxes on $40,000. So, you know, that's why Why, Joe? Why is it that? Why is that? So you've got, just kind of these wild conspiracy web things about how the economy works. That's pretty typical. Joe Biden's not unique in that. It's just, unfortunately, economics is, I don't want to say that it's complicated, but it is deemed to be complicated. And so a lot of people just don't bother trying to figure it out. So some of these quote unquote higher society, academic studies, they're just, they're meant to look scary. Only a smart person, only a really, really smart person could figure that out. It's not true. It's kind of this like mythos that people have created around it. I think the average American is perfectly capable of understanding some basic macroeconomics and understanding that, if Joe Biden wants to spend another $6 trillion for this unity agenda, which I guess that was the new name for the Build Back Better plan, this unity agenda, that is what is going to lead to more inflation and cost them more. I think the average American is perfectly capable of understanding that, if their child care drops 50% or to zero, their child care bill, but the price of cereal has tripled and the price of gasoline has doubled, or even on the West Coast tripled for gasoline this week is the numbers I'm seeing. They would probably understand, that's not a good trade-off. Everything is trade-offs. That's actually one of the most basic financial lessons that there is that everything's trade-offs. You don't get one thing without getting a little bit less of another thing. And that's okay. That's okay. The entire economy is about giving up something to get something else, and hopefully that thing that you're getting is of more value. So the average person needs to be asking themselves, is it a good trade to have a lower childcare bill and then a higher gas and eggs price? And I think that the average American doesn't know to make that calculation, unfortunately, at least certainly the average Democratic voter. They can certainly feel it. But they might, because of this really long feedback loop between voting every 4 years and the price at the pump today, there's a really long feedback loop on there. And the cause and effect chain being such a long time, people aren't realizing that a lot of what they're experiencing right now is really a direct result of the types of people that they're electing. That's kind of a lesson that Ukraine's learning this week. Ukraine's learning that lesson, that there are consequences for the people that you elect. Maybe not consequences, cause and effect, instant karma the moment that you pull the lever for somebody. In fact, for politics, it's usually kind of the opposite of instant karma. It's very, very long-term karma. But eventually, there is a bill that comes due. For the Ukrainians, they allowed a just unbelievably corrupt government to exist in their country for up to 25 years. And they finally did something about it with Zelensky, but it was just a little too little, a little too late. And then Zelensky didn't push in hard enough. Zelensky, I'm going to stand by what I said on Sunday. Zelensky he had Biden's political career in his hands at one point in time, and he fumbled that ball. And had he not fumbled that ball, there is a good chance that he would be probably getting up this morning to just drive into the office as he normally would. But instead, I don't know what he's doing. We thought that maybe he was fighting alongside insurgents and guerrilla warfare tactics in the streets of Kyiv, but that seems to be fake. But he would certainly be having a better week had he done something to not have Biden be president right now. And I think he had that opportunity, and I think he fumbled that ball. But regardless, the Ukrainians are paying the price for their corruption. Again, not every person is corrupt, but if enough of your fellow countrymen are, well, everybody's got to pay that price. America, we're very quickly coming up on paying that price. And again, I think a lot of you didn't do a lot to contribute to this bad state of affairs that America's in, or this careening off the cliff, as it seems that we're this path that we're headed on. But the nature of a country is that you don't have to be the one doing it, but if enough of your fellow countrymen are, well, you're going over the cliff with them. You are paying that price with them. And enough of our fellow countrymen are extremely silly and frivolous, enough so to the point that we are going to have a price to pay in the very near future, just as Ukraine is paying theirs. Let's see here. So let me see through chat. Did anybody have any particular things they wanted to talk about? Attack God, telling the troops to attack God. I thought the union talk was interesting. So he had a union steelworker there from Pennsylvania. Oh, he talked about Scranton again, which that I believe was debunked pretty heavily during the 2020 election. That he spent a few months in Scranton. He he on the campaign trail for 2020. He actually at one point had said something to the effect that he knows the type of coal that comes out of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania's got hard coal. It's got harder coal than anywhere else in the world. As if he has ever picked up a pickaxe and gone to mine coal. Extremely unlikely. So Joe Biden again tonight pretending as though he is a coal miner. Not quite. Another thing that was kind of a myth that's been debunked is Beau Biden. So obviously it's a tragedy to lose a child, but it's more tragic to, well, I don't want to say it's more tragic. It's a high level of tragedy to use a dead child for, I don't even know, clout, political gain, the butt of a story. So Beau Biden died in, I believe, 2014 or maybe 2015 of brain cancer. Now, Joe had continuously attributed that brain cancer to, let's see here, had continuously attributed that brain cancer to his time in the military. The type of brain cancer that he had, there was no link that could be found between his military service and that kind of brain cancer. Now, Biden just brought up during his speech that there's these burn pits where the military will dump all kinds of garbage and waste and all kinds of things, and they'll burn it. They'll pour diesel into it and they'll set it on fire. It's a common practice in desert warfare. For better or worse, it's a thing that happens. And so, yes, that, as you might imagine, burning industrial chemicals and equipment and things and human waste, and then having the wind pick up some of that smoke and blow it towards the base. Yeah, you can imagine that probably in pretty short order causes harm. Also, just the kinds of chemicals and things that you're around 24/7 as a member of the armed forces is just unimaginably toxic. Just the ammunition alone, you're talking about picking up just tons and tons of lead, all absorbing into your skin and breathing it in, as anybody knows who shoots regularly. And if you don't do this, God, do it, please. Make sure you de-lead yourself before you go eat something. Don't go shoot out 100 rounds and then go barehanded go eat a burger or something like that. Go wash your hands off. Get that lead off. But there again, the military is a very toxic environment, and that has effects. That has very negative health effects for veterans. And we need to do something about that. Absolutely. But Joe Biden will conflate these real issues. That's a real issue is respiratory cancers with our military members as veterans due to exposures during their service. It's very, very real. And then Joe Biden will take that and conflate that with his son, his dead son who died of an unrelated issue. And then to what purpose? To what purpose? Just to, I don't know, I guess garner sympathy or credibility, or I don't know. It's very strange, and I don't like it. It's gross. It's very gross. And again, he wraps it up with this thing that's obviously very important, obviously very true, is the veteran health effects of their service. And so it's hard to attack him. It's like, oh, if you're let's say you're centrist or even left leaning relative, you're talking about this, and they say, oh, wasn't it great that what he said about the veterans? And you say, yeah, and they go, well, isn't it so sad what they did about about his kid? He's doing this because of his kid. And you can say, well, that's not true. And they say, well, what do you mean it's not true? Of course veterans are ill. It's like, well, no. I mean, that part's real, but his son didn't die. Well, his son died of cancer. He was talking about cancer. And so he takes this fake story and then wraps it up, launders it through this very real story, this very real issue. And now they're stuck together. And if you try to pull out the nuance in it and try to explain it to people, you just sound like a crazy person at best. And you sound like a massive jerk who doesn't care about someone's kid dying of cancer at worst. And so that's why it's so disgusting that he would do that. And that's why I guess I've spent a good 5 minutes talking about Beau Biden's brain cancer. Another one of Biden's kid who had brain cancer was Hunter, though he didn't die from the brain cancer. He's just brain dead, probably from all the crack. Speaking of crack, wow, amazing that we are talking about addiction and people getting the opioid crisis. Nearly 2 weeks. I know it was a long 2 weeks ago, but 2 weeks ago, Joe was he was signing bills to pass out crack pipes, not just regular crack pipes, like special, designer Pyrex crack pipes. To watch our show from 2 or 3 weeks ago, special designer Pyrex crack pipes to black people specifically, just to black people. And then now we're man, what a long time 3 weeks is. Now we're talking about reducing the opioid crisis. And then again, within that discussion, there was some bizarre statement that there's laws preventing doctors from treating opioid addiction. What on earth is he? Cite one. There is none. There is absolutely no laws on any books anywhere that would prevent a doctor from treating opioid addiction. That's insane. That is just not true. That is just absolutely not true. And so you've got this obviously real issue of opioid addiction, something that a lot of people are concerned about and passionate about, and it's a real problem that needs a real solution. And so he'll take that real issue and then he mixes it with this bizarre lie about doctors being illegal for them to treat opioid addiction. You already had the country sold on reducing the opioid crisis. Yeah, we were sold. You could have stopped there. You don't want to oversell yourself. Let's not oversell the bill here. You had us locked in at reduce the opioid crisis. You don't need to keep making stuff up after that. There's a term for that, and I'm not remembering it precisely, so I don't think I'm going to try to say it. I think I believe it's a case that proves too much. At a certain point, when you're it's a legal theory for lawyers, when you're in a case and you're pleading your case to the jury, a case that perhaps proves too much, where you've maybe proven your innocence in one state or in one factor, but you've now explained it so much that you've now made yourself guilty in another factor. You've overproved your case. And I think that was Joe Biden. He proved his case by saying, let's reduce the opioid crisis. And then he overproved it by making up these weird lies about laws against treating opioid addicts. And in fact, if there is any laws in the books about against treating opioid addicts, you can be guaranteed that it's wrapped up with this leftist, quote unquote harm reduction stuff. Let's see here. There was another thing I wanted to talk about. He talked about green energy, which that was all pretty boilerplate. Actually, it was not boilerplate because there's no boilers in green energy. But maybe it was it a turbine blade? Yeah, it was a standard turbine blades. So we had that. We had this weird kind of contradiction between wanting to massively increase the corporate tax rate. Basically, the 15% minimum would make it so that you couldn't deduct your taxes past 15%. So the way corporations, quote unquote, get away with not paying taxes, it's not true. They have to pay your income tax, half of it. So if you work for a company, you know that you have income tax taken out of your check. It's typically like 7.5%, and then your company pays the other 7.5%. So your company pays 7.5%, they have to pay it, and then you pay 7.5%. And you can guess what would happen if there was no income tax. Your income would be 7.5% higher. Actually, it'd probably be, well, it would be 7.5% higher on the bottom line number, but you would get 14% more. How crazy is that? So he's talking about what companies do is they'll invest in stuff like infrastructure, capital. They'll buy a truck, they'll buy a factory, they'll buy a robot, they'll hire workforce, they'll train their workforce, and all of that is tax deductible. It's expenses that they can deduct off their taxes. So Joe Biden was earlier in his speech talking about he wants to reshore a bunch of the supply chain. He wants to bring all of these factories back and have all of this production done domestically for all of these various sectors, which I fully support. It sounds a lot like the Make America Great, America First agenda. So I'm all for that. I don't care who's parroting it. I will support that. Do I think Joe Biden's going to actually do that? Absolutely not. But you want to have all of these companies do massive investment projects in building. If you've got a company who's got a factory overseas and you want them to reshore that factory, they have to build that factory here. So you're talking about having these companies you're trying to get them to have these massive capital investment projects here in the States at the same time that you want to make it more difficult for them to deduct those investments from their taxes. There's a lot of problems with the corporate tax rate and how the entire tax system is structured in general. There's a lot of problems with it. But I don't think having these extremely high line agendas that are in perfect contradiction with each other, I don't see that as a valuable way forward politically. I think that will continue to confuse the public, and what it'll really mean is that nothing will actually happen, because a bill will get presented in Congress and it'll say, oh, well, we're going to do this to help Invest at Home Act. And they'll say, well, that kind of contradicts the Tax the Corporations More Act. And okay, well, let's look at the Tax Corporations More Act. I'm like, oh, well, that doesn't really fit with the Invest More at Home Act. So you're just going to have this back and forth of these contradicting laws. And what's really going to happen is that these laws will be massive bills, and they will have, because of the contradictions, they will have special carve-outs. Who will those special carve-outs affect? Well, it's probably going to be the people that donate the most to the Democrat Party. Which, speaking of them, big tech, man. Big tech's really lost a lot of favor lately. You got Joe was all over big tech, talking about data retention and no more targeted advertisements at kids. And he was actually remarkably clear during that segment of his speech. Obviously, these are all things that are infinitely above his head. He has no concept of technology. Somebody else wrote that for him, clearly. But I absolutely support this idea of let's own our own data. Let's stop mass bulk data collection. And while we're at it, why don't we why don't we bring the NSA and FBI and CIA into that fray too? Let's treat them like big tech. And no more collecting data without your permission. No more targeted advertisements. No more exploitation of children with technology. I think that a lot of these corporations have research data that shows how they can target children, target their habit centers. I hesitate to use the word addiction with technology because I find technology much more useful than a crack pipe. So if I had to choose an addiction, I would choose a more useful one. But I certainly understand the concept of it. But these things are certainly habit forming. Not all habits are bad, but when you've got a corporation who says, hey, we have these, mushy-brained little 5-year-olds and their mother's busy because she has to work, 3 jobs to keep up with Joe Biden's inflation, and Joe Biden paid for her kids to go to this daycare taught by a purple-haired communist who on the weekends burns down Portland and maybe kills some black kids. She's not really good at teaching, so she just handed this mushy-brained 5-year-old a Chromebook. How can we make money off of that? That's what the big tech corporations are doing right now, and they've got a lot of data helping them figure out how to do that. And if Biden and Congress wants to go after them for that, great. What's really going to happen with that is not what you think. What most likely will happen with that is that it's not going to be you own your own data. It's not going to be that there's no more targeted advertisements for your kids, or that Google's not allowed to have these weird habit forming studies on small children. What's really going to happen is they'll restrict crypto. They will have the social media will censor things that the government doesn't like. They will put in kill switches for your Apple and Samsung Pay, as they've done apparently in Russia this week. Those are the types of things that are likely to happen. The sales pitch is no more big tech snooping on your data. The pill that they're actually going to shove down your throat will be restricting crypto, restricting your social media ability, probably restricting your privacy by requiring the NSA to I guess track you more, etc. Whatever the bill is that represents what Joe Biden said about big tech, you can be absolutely guaranteed it will be worse for you than what the current state of affairs is. And the current state of affairs is pretty bad. Let's see here. So we also had, trying to go from memory here. Not doing too bad to do this all from memory here. Let's see here. So let's check out anything else that they wanted to talk about. Emotional manipulation. Yeah. So in the, back to the military thing there. So you had, something that I think is going to be played quite a bit tomorrow is, while Joe Biden was talking about these, these burn pits, causing the types of cancers that cause flags to be draped over coffins, which that was a really powerful line. Whoever wrote that was a really, really good, well-crafted bit of poetry there, kind of alluding to what was, to what happens there. Joe Biden's delivery of that was obviously garbled and atrocious, as is expected. However, you may have heard someone shout in the background. So as Joe Biden's delivering this wonderfully crafted line about, ending cancers that cause flags to be draped over soldiers' coffins, somebody yelled out, "You caused 13 more of them," or something about 13 more of them. And that was an obvious reference to the 13 servicemen and women who lost their lives during the, I don't even know what to call it. I guess they called it the evacuation of Afghanistan, kind of a battle of Kabul. But the absolutely disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan, 110% Joe Biden's fault. And maybe you can throw in a few extra percent there for Milley and Lloyd Austin. They certainly did their part of fucking that whole thing up. So yeah, but that whole thing had consequences. And the consequences were that 13 servicemen and women lost their lives. It was basically the bloodiest day in American military history in like a generation. It is insane. And so somebody, it sounds like a female. I wouldn't be surprised if it was a someone like a Lauren Boebert or a I can't remember what the other one's name is. I got some firebrand freshman Republican women in Congress right now who's really just killing it. I wouldn't be surprised if it was one of them. I don't know that for sure. I didn't necessarily recognize the voice. I am sure we will find out tomorrow who that is. But whoever it was yelled out 13 more in obvious reference to what Joe Biden did. That kind of echoes back to an Obama State of the Union address where Obama was, I'm not even trying to remember what Obama was talking about, but I certainly remember the congressman that yelled out, "You lied." I can't remember what exactly that was in reference to, and I'm sure in 5 or 10 years from now, you'll remember that somebody yelled out, you made 13 of them, but you're not necessarily going to remember the context around which that happened. So this is kind of a thing that's happened before. Republicans are a little rowdy during the State of the Union. Democrats burned down all of our major cities. So, it's a little bit of, give and take. Both parties, have their issues. Let's see here. Chat got. Do you think it was Tulsi? No. Timberwolf thinks maybe it was Tulsi. I don't know. I don't know about that. Tulsi's. If it was Tulsi, oh man, that would be interesting if it was her. I doubt it because she seems so civil, but that's obviously as a guardsman herself, that's I would imagine an issue near and dear to her heart, though she's not the only, definitely not the only veteran in Congress. So, which I don't even think that she's in Congress anymore. I'm not sure. Let's see here. Alrighty. So, Joe Biden, I would say overall, I'm always surprised at hearing him speak the obvious state of decay that he's in. I definitely think the last 3 months, the number of verbal gaffes that he's had have just gone off the charts. I don't know that he had any. Yeah, I mean, he did have a few that were like kind of over the top for this speech, I guess. Obviously, that vaccine wall joke attempt was just totally derailed where he stopped in the middle of it. He did, however, avoid saying his signature line when he gets into kind of a verbal cul-de-sac, which is, never mind. Which he's done quite often. He will be going off on some kind of tangent, lose his place, and just say, never mind. Usually when it's something important, though. So he did avoid doing that. There was some weird booing. I think that the booing, and I think you guys in chat were a little confused about it too. I also was. Having thought about it for a little bit, I think the booing in reference to certain things was booing the thing Biden was condemning, not booing Biden himself. It was like a supportive boo. I believe the first one was in reference to something the previous administration did, and it was the Trump era tax cuts, and then Biden said that there was $2 trillion of Trump era tax cuts, and then there was just a lot of booing after that. And I believe the way that was meant to be interpreted was that they were booing the tax cuts, not booing Biden being upset about the tax cuts. It was odd. And then there was another moment where there was also booing that seemed to be the same thing, where it was Biden condemning something and then people booing the thing that he condemned. I guess that makes sense. It just doesn't translate to TV very well. It is a little odd, but I don't think that they were booing him. Though I could be wrong. Let's see here. So there is. I know that there was an interesting, news event that Ilhan Omar was going to be giving a response, which normally the party of the president doesn't give a response because the president is the one who just gave his State of the Union. Typically, the response is given by the other party. And so I'm not sure who's doing the Republican response. Not that it really matters. This is basically my response. This is the Direwolf Media response. But Ilhan Omar doing a response kind of shows that the Democrat Party is fracturing quite substantially. I believe it's splitting apart or getting ready to split apart. There was obviously cracks, the last 4 years, fractures much deeper the last 2 years. And then now maybe you've got some actual splitting apart. That was very evident, I'm getting some breaking news here. It was Lauren Boebert who shouted out during the State of the Union to say that 13 people had died in Afghanistan. All right, so I was right in guessing Lauren Boebert. I guess pat me on the back for that. No, so you heard that Joe Biden say fund the police, which was interesting. And he was also discussing the large funeral procession that happened in New York last month that he attended, which I believe we talked about that on a previous show, just kind of how odd it was that you had New York City police who, after 2 years of locking people in their house and harassing Jews and not doing anything about Black Lives Matter burning down their city, or beating the Jews, you had these police officers all gathering 10,000 of them in the street in this giant, just densely packed parade for these two officers that died. And yeah, it sucks that they died. Officers die all over the place. We don't have 10,000 person parades in the middle of New York for them. But it's just the obvious juxtaposition of the enforcers who enforced the COVID mandates and the lockdowns. But they wanted to go to a funeral. You couldn't go to a funeral for, Nana, but they could go to the funeral for, somebody who they never met that worked in a precinct 5 miles away from them. And they could gather in 10,000 strong. But, if you had a wedding or attended a wedding the last 2 years, you could have, 30 people max. So it just, again, there is this kind of stratification that was created by the Democrats, definitely exacerbated by COVID, where you've got laws for you, less laws for the people enforcing the laws on you, like the law enforcement, and then no laws for the people who make the laws, like the congressmen and all of the Democrat politicians who went maskless pretty much the whole pandemic, which also very much interesting. We've not seen footage from the halls of Congress in quite a long time without masks on. So that was for whatever the reason, obviously that was well timed to be right before the State of the Union. CDC releasing mask mandates on Friday, the CDC revising their COVID severity formula on Saturday, all just in time for the State of the Union on Tuesday. Wow, just such a coincidence that those all happened at the exact same time. Just like there was such a coincidence that Pfizer had the announcement for their vaccine, that they had successfully cracked the code for the vaccine just a day after the election. It was very, very odd. All these coincidences. Steven Crowder's got this new segment called Curious Coincidences, because you're not allowed to talk about conspiracy theories on YouTube anymore. But there's a lot of curious coincidences that just make you scratch your chin a little bit. So the COVID's over, apparently. That's great. That was probably the at least the key takeaway from this speech. I guess we'll see what happens in midterms. If you would like the mandates to continue stopping, elect Republicans at the midterms. If you would like them to come back, then elect the Democrats. Let's see here. We had back to again the this idea of being very pro-police. I know last month or the month before, there was this schism with the Squad members, Rashida Tlaib in particular, where the Democrat party, like the convention, the actual like organization of the Democrat Party, had kind of put out the statement they weren't going to be anti-police anymore because there was a lot of polling, obviously, that says that people like police. They at least like safety. And Rashida Tlaib said, well, I'm still defund the police, et cetera, et cetera. So there's obviously a schism there. And I think that probably has a lot to do with why Ilhan Omar was going to do her own response against the Democrat Party. Because the Republicans are a very big tent, conservatives are a very big tent, which encompasses Republicans and a lot of other kind of distant ideologies and belief systems. And the Democrats are a very narrow tent, though they are trying to both stuff in their progressivism and then their establishment cronyism. And those two parties have essentially no compatibility. One of the reasons why the Republicans are able to have, conservatives are able to have such a big tent, is that a lot of our ideologies, well, they do have certain prescriptions for certain groups at times. They are much less oppressive against people who don't believe what you believe, whereas both flavors of democratism, both crony capitalism or crony socialism and progressivism, they both require extreme oppression of your political adversaries to work. Conservatism, a little oppressive. Libertarianism, none at all. All the stuff in between, a lot less oppressive to your neighbor and to your political adversaries. Progressive Democrat stuff, your kind of socialist Marxist ideology, it requires absolute subjugation. Your corrupt establishmentarianism, that requires absolute authoritarianism. And so those two kind of flavors of the Democrat Party, they do not fit very well in their tent. And so I guess we'll see where that goes. But it's been widely believed that the Democrat Party is just ready to shatter at any moment now. And I guess we'll see what happens leading up to the midterms. Midterms are going to be interesting because there's a lot of Democrats who are incumbents in their seat, or they would be if they were running, who are not going to run. It's predicted pretty confidently that the Republicans will sweep definitely the House, possibly the Senate. Oh, sorry, definitely the Senate, probably the House. Though, don't underestimate the Republicans' abilities to absolutely screw up an election, as they have been known to do over and over and over again. But the Democrats just don't have any. Their establishment people are getting out as soon as they can. The up-and-comers, you've got AOC, you got Rashida Tlaib, the other members of the Squad who not really leaders. There's certainly no Kennedy. You've got Pete Buttigieg, Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris isn't even really that young anymore. You got a lot of these real B-lister coattail riders who are not charismatic in any way. At bare minimum, because your Democrat ideas, they don't work, so you have to be charismatic. And your best Democrat politician is going to be charismatic. That was one of the things Obama had going for him. He's extremely charismatic, very, very good orator, and he could spin a yarn about the absolute biggest pile of bullshit you ever saw, and he could make you want to vote for it. And people did. Joe Biden, well, he's not as good at that. Kamala Harris, she's not as good at that. Pete Buttigieg, well, he just doesn't show up for work, so it's kind of hard there. Let's see here. Actually, speaking of Kamala, there's a rather funny clip going around about her. Let's see if I can find it. There we go. So this was Kamala Harris on a podcast called The Morning Hustle. Oh boy. She was explaining the Ukraine situation here, which is rather entertaining. We'll take a listen here. Just again, just to highlight the statesmanship that these Democrats in waiting have, and just the well, I'll let her speak for herself.
If you're watching any level of news, even social media, you're seeing everything that's going on right now in the Ukraine. Break it down in layman's terms for people who don't understand what's going on and how can this directly affect the people of the United States.
So Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia. Russia is a bigger country. Russia is a powerful country. Russia decided to invade a smaller country called Ukraine. So basically, that's wrong.
If you're watching any level of news, even social media, you're seeing it.
So basically, that's wrong. If you're curious how in merely a year, the Joe Biden administration was able to somehow bring us to the brink of World War III, well, that is the type of geopolitical acumen they have walking around the White House halls. So, great. Alrighty. So I think that's about it. I would say that there was, as predicted, he mentioned Trump, not by name, but mentioned his predecessor. He mentioned the mess that he had inherited. Obviously, he talked about his diversity hire Supreme Court pick. Talked a lot about climate change. Let's see here. We learned the new name of Build Back Better, and that is the Unity Agenda, which is, I guess, yeah. I'm for good stuff, and I'm not against bad stuff. Woo. Nancy did stand to clap at weird times. I think that was kind of a low probability prediction, but I won that one. There was this weird moment where she stood up with her fingers turned inward, kind of like they were fists, and she rubbed her fists together instead of, I don't know what it was, but it was very odd. I was a little bit nervous and disconcerted to watch it. Made me feel queasy, and maybe I needed to look over my shoulder. I don't know what she was doing that for. It was a very odd time because nobody else stood up to clap, and she wasn't clapping. She was just rubbing her fists together. So I think I absolutely nailed that prediction that Nancy would stand to clap at a weird time. Let's see here. Some of the Dems refused to clap. I don't know that I saw any Dems refusing to clap. I know that there was kind of people who just didn't stand up, but there wasn't an obvious section of Democrats that didn't stand for something, so I missed on that one. He took responsibility for the economy. I don't think that was a hard prediction. The economy the economy is doing weird stuff right now, because if you look at certain factors like the stock market, well, it was up and dropped back down a little bit. But then you look at unemployment, and then you've got to kind of adjust out the COVID rubber band effect. Again, 6 million jobs, quote unquote, created. Well, great, Joe. That's great that you created 6 million jobs. Can you write down very specifically what policies you did to create those 6 million jobs? Because we would love to continue replicating that for, I don't know, every year for the rest of time. If you've got the magic bullet to take what is normally a 1 to 2 million jobs per year, if you can somehow triple or quadruple that, please, wise serpent, please tell us what is the magic formula to get us to 6 million jobs every year. Or is it that you didn't do anything special and that it just happened? And as I believe Ben Shapiro puts it, it's a parade that Joe Biden just happened to find himself in the front of, and as he's walking, he thinks he's leading the parade. But the parade was marching on with or without him. He just ran out in front of it. Let's see here. Obviously, he took responsibility for the COVID numbers dropping. He took responsibility in the exact way that I predicted, which was that, the CDC released the mask mandate 2 days ago, and they revised the severity numbers down 1 day ago, which means that, Joe Biden solved COVID by, I don't know, doing math differently. I guess that's probably the Common Core math. Let's see here. On the Ukraine situation, he has very harsh words for Putin. I guess that's good. It's one thing. I don't know if I was going to get into a whole foreign policy discussion, which I'm going to try not to, and try and wrap this up here pretty quick. I think that we need to have a speak softly, carry a big stick approach. I think that worked very well the last time the Russian region got out of line. I know there were the Soviets back then. I think that Joe Biden saying Putin at all is scary. Even if it looks like they're doing the right thing, even if it looks like they're being tough, I hesitate to say, Trump was an expert brinksmanshipist, but he was. He pulled South or North Korea right up to the edge, and then they faltered. He pulled Iran right up to the edge, and they faltered. He pulled all of the terrorist group of the week, pulled all them up to the edge, and they faltered. He seemed like a wild man, but he also you can't really debate the effects of it. But regardless, I just, anything Joe Biden does, whether he's weak on Putin, whether he's strong rhetoric against Putin, whether he's talking about a strong national defense, or he's talking about just letting Putin do what he wants, anything that Joe Biden says, anything that Joe Biden has a plan to do against Russia, it makes me nervous. There is nothing that they could say that would make me not nervous about that, because they have shown an uncanny ability to just totally screw this stuff up. So you can be sure that it doesn't matter what policy they're going to try to push forward in response to Russia, in response to Putin, they will screw it up. It doesn't matter if they're going to try to be tough against him. They will screw it up somehow. It doesn't matter if they're going to try to, show deference and appeasement. They will screw that up too. And the stakes for screwing those things up are pretty high this time. Joe Biden was just famously wrong about every foreign policy decision since the 80s. He was on the wrong side of every foreign policy issue since the 80s. So I don't think that he's somehow magically on the right side of them this time, which makes me nervous by default. All right. Well, Joe Biden said the State of the Union is strong because you're strong. I won't disagree with that. I think the State of the Union is much more dependent on the people than the Union itself. I would say that the concept of the Union has never been more fragile, more full of Swiss cheese and destruction. I think the last 2 years have really shown that. However, I think America is full of strong individuals, and at some point it will return to us, as Ukraine is returning to their individuals. All right, guys. Well, that has been the State of the Union. Thank you guys for joining me. Again, I know you guys had lots of other options for other commentators to watch along with, and so it means a lot to me that you guys chose to be here. And so I thank you. Dyer will be back with me on Saturday for our weekly news recap. And until then, stay safe, and hopefully no nuclear winters or summers. Hopefully Russia works itself out. I guess we'll find out, though. All right. I'll see you guys. Ben Fox Trevize signing off.